Hey, what's up, everybody? Steve Schwartz here from LSAT Unplugged with some updates about what happened during the June 2022 LSAT and how that could affect the potential removal or changing of the LSAT logic games section for future LSAT takers. Before I get into everything, please do me a favor, like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. It really helps with that YouTube algorithm. So anyway, back to what happened on the June LSAT. Some test takers were notified at the beginning of the fourth section that the section they were about to complete was the unscored experimental section. Along with this, they received some survey questions about whether they use scratch paper and to what extent scratch paper helps them with the exam. They also received some unusual logic games style questions, unlike what you would typically see on a standard section of LSAT logic games. This is, of course, unusual. LSAC never tells you which section is the unscored experimental section during the exam. People might discuss this online later after the fact, but of course, you typically walk out of LSAT test day not really knowing immediately which section was, in fact, that unscored experimental section. Now, why was LSAC asking about scratch paper? Why were they using unique logic games style questions that do not typically fit the mold of your standard logic games? Because usually on the experimental section, the questions you see are virtually indistinguishable from standard sections of games, reasoning, or reading comprehension. The reason we have to backtrack, let's go back to 2017 when a blind test taker, Angelo Bino, sued the Law School Admission Council, saying that he was an unfair disadvantage when it came to performing well on the LSAT because he could not do well on logic games relative to the standard test taker. I mean, think about it. Try doing logic games without being able to use scratch paper or benefit from diagramming. It's going to be quite difficult. So Mr. Bino certainly had a point. And in fall 2019, Bino settled with the Law School Admission Council, who at the time agreed to complete research and development into a new version of the LSAT without the current logic game section. That was back in 2019. We're now in the middle of 2022, so we are coming up on that 4-year mark, that 4-year deadline for LSAC to complete their research and development. They should, according to their agreement, complete it by next year. So these survey questions and these new bizarre logic games style questions may be part of LSAC's research and development into a new version of the LSAT without the current logic game section. I will link the press release related to that lawsuit settlement below this video. I will also link a video I did in the past that went into more depth about what exactly happened in that lawsuit, what that settlement looks like, and what that might mean for future LSAT test takers. Of course, at the time of this recording, we are still in June 2022. I imagine many of you watching or listening to this right now will be taking the LSAT sometime in the next 6 to 12 months. So you may be wondering, will you need to do the LSAT with the current logic games section? If you hate logic games, you might be celebrating this and hoping that if you're taking the LSAT in August, September, October, that you would not be doing the logic games section. If you love logic games, maybe you're worried they might be going away soon. Everyone, please chill out for a minute. We have no reason to think that the LSAT will radically change in the next couple of months or even this year. LSAC moves quite slowly and deliberately, and so it may be a significant period of time before we see a new version of the LSAT on the scored sections, the ones that matter, the ones that count, without the current logic games section. They typically make announcements far in advance, and of course, I would notify you far in advance as well regarding any changes to the LSAT. LSAC needs to figure out exactly what that new logic game section would look like. They need to test it out again and again and again on these future experimental sections. So if you're taking the August LSAT, you may see an unscored experimental section with bizarre logic game style questions like many June test takers did, but that would probably not be the ones that count. If the LSAC were going to make radical changes to logic games, they would notify everyone far in advance. They would probably give you some sample questions to work on. If we look back into LSAT history, the biggest recent change to the LSAT was the introduction of comparative reading, aka dual passages that happened in June 2007. And LSAC gave plenty of notice about that. They provided some sample questions back then as well. And that wasn't nearly as big a change as what we will likely see with logic games being removed. I mean, if you think, or being changed, if you think about it, if they want to make a new version of logic games that does not require diagramming, or at least does not put those unable to benefit from diagrams like blind test takers at a significant disadvantage, they will probably give plenty of notice, since that would be quite a significant change. So if you are currently studying for the LSAT, if you are planning to take the LSAT anytime, at least in the next 3 to 6 months, I would expect you will be taking it with the current LSAT logic games section, which means that you should keep studying logic games. This is not an excuse to put logic games aside. If you are thinking about whether to take the LSAT in the next couple of years, sooner versus later, and you like logic games, I would recommend take it now, take it soon with the current logic games section, where you will have nearly 400 released LSAT logic games to study and to practice. And even if you don't like logic games, please know that they are typically, in my experience, the most learnable and even the most perfectible section. I know they seem intimidating at first, especially for those of us who don't have strong math backgrounds, including myself. I personally was not good at math, and I struggled a lot with logic games at the beginning. It ended up being one of my best sections. It is much easier for most people to perfect logic games because it doesn't have the same sort of perceived ambiguities of language that you see in logical reasoning and reading comprehension. Regardless, again, folks, I will keep you updated of any changes well in advance, as will LSAC. That's all for now. If you found this video helpful, please do me a favor, like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. It really helps with that YouTube algorithm. Anyway, folks, again, that's all for now. All the best. Take care. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.